Your era is over, Grandpa. This isn't personal. You're just a liability now. That's what my grandson said. No hesitation. Just corporate poetry, delivered by someone who still double-checks spreadsheets with his thumb. He didn't flinch when he slid the envelope across the desk. The same desk I carved with a penknife in '88 because we couldn't afford replacements. He probably thought it was a branding feature. I picked up the envelope. Didn't open it. Didn't ask questions. Just said, "So be it." He blinked like he expected more. Maybe a protest. Maybe tears. Maybe a desperate final act. Instead, I adjusted my cufflink. The one with the Hawthorne emblem. The original one. Before Ethan's rebrand turned it into something that looked like a biotech startup for lizards. My name is Louis Danner, 67, founder of Hawthorne Group. We started in a storage unit with a landline and a fax that jammed when it rained. I stood. No handshake, no farewell. Just the subtle creak of my knees and the weight of 4 decades held by one spine. There were 3 other board members in the room. One looked out the window. The other 2 examined their nails like there was a manicure hidden under guilt. On my way out, I paused beside Ethan. He was already refreshing his inbox. "Evolution, not betrayal," he murmured. "You always said adapt or die." I looked at him. "You adapted," I said. "We'll see about the rest." At reception, I placed my security badge on the desk. Then I reached into my coat pocket and slid a handwritten note beneath it. The front desk guy glanced at it. Just a name written in block letters. Linda. He didn't ask. I took the long elevator down. A junior analyst stepped in, recognized me, and offered a nervous nod. I nodded back once. Slow. Deliberate. When I stepped into the lobby, the founder's wall stared back. My son's photo still hung there, right next to mine. He died 5 years ago. Ethan was 15. The glass over our photo was newer than the rest. I had it replaced after some intern cracked it with a selfie stick. Before I left, I pulled out a black marker, and I wrote one word on the glass. Legacy. Then I walked out. The wind outside tasted like burnt metal. Storm coming. My truck, still the same rusted Ford from the old days, waited in the 3rd row of the parking deck. Inside the glove box was a worn leather case. Not an envelope, not a USB. A case. I opened it. Inside were 3 things: a copy of our original shareholder agreement, a folded napkin with a list of 4 names, and a key. No label, just weight. I took the case, locked it in the center console, and drove. I didn't go home. I went to the old office. The one we never sold. The one Ethan doesn't know still has power. I sat at the original desk. Still uneven. Still mine. Booted up the desktop tower we left behind. Like an artifact. It still whirred like a lawnmower in heat. One folder on the desktop. Vesting Clause A2. I didn't open it. I just smiled. Then I pulled out my phone. Opened my email. Typed, Connor, 4.3, A2, time to light the match. No greeting, no sign-off, just sent. The reply wouldn't come soon, but the spark was set. They'll say the drop was sudden. A market anomaly, tech correction, rebalancing. They won't know what Clause 4.3 really means. But Ethan will. When the numbers start bleeding and the press starts calling, he'll remember that folder I didn't delete. And that key. And maybe, just maybe, that it was never about power. It was about patience. He thought I lost. He forgot who gave him the playbook. They say legacy skips a generation. That's not true. Ethan didn't skip it. He watched it, studied it, learned it like a language, and then rewrote it in a dialect I no longer speak. When he was 12, I let him shadow me on Fridays. Apprenticeship, I called it. He'd sit beside me at the old desk, watching as I read contracts with a red pen and sipped black coffee from a chipped mug that said, "Risk so reward." He asked real questions back then. Why use clauses if they just confuse people? I said, because law is chess, not checkers. Confusion is protection. He nodded like he understood. Maybe he did. There was a time he took pride in being my shadow. I remember one evening, we stayed late reviewing a proposal from a mining outfit in Idaho. The office was dark except for my desk lamp. Ethan dozed off mid-sentence and I covered him with my jacket. That was the first time he called me Grandpa instead of Sir. My son Daniel was the bridge between us. He had my eyes but none of my stubbornness. He led with calm, managed clients like old friends. He knew when to push and when to listen. Ethan got that from him, at least the surface charm. The last time Daniel and I sat alone was in that same office. He was sick by then. Not terminal, but close enough for the silence to feel sharp. "I'm not worried about the company," he said, "but I am about Ethan. He listens to noise. You're the compass." He chuckled, then added, "Just don't let the brand lose its name." 3 weeks later, the cancer won. I held the service myself. Ethan didn't cry. Not once. I told myself it was grief. Now I'm not sure. The first crack came 2 years ago. Ethan pushed for a name change, wanted to drop Hawthorne and rebrand as H2 Capital. Said it sounded modern, scalable, neutral. I said it sounded like a bottled water company. He didn't laugh. Then came the hiring blitz. Fresh MBAs, venture buzzwords. He stopped using paper, started treating history like clutter. Once I found the framed award from our first IPO in the discard bin. Said it was digitized already. I tried once to pull him back. Took him to a lunch meeting with Vernon Cho, a legacy client, old school oil, handshake first type. Vernon remembered Ethan as a boy and spoke to him like kin. Ethan checked his phone 6 times before the soup arrived. When we stepped outside, I said, "You're not listening anymore." He said, "We can't grow if we're always looking backward." He didn't see the irony. The final boardroom meeting before the termination. I remember it now like a dress rehearsal. Ethan led the session. I was seated silent. He presented the Q4 strategy like a TED Talk, slides, quips, data heat maps. Everyone clapped. I didn't. Afterward, he asked, "Why so quiet?" I said, "I've already spoken. You just stopped hearing me." That night, I drove to the old office, the one we never listed on the books. Ethan doesn't know it exists. Daniel did. Inside, the furniture was dusty but intact. I poured myself a whiskey. No ice. Then I opened the second drawer of the file cabinet and pulled out a folder. Not a digital backup, the real thing. Labeled in my son's handwriting, "For Ethan, only if needed." I didn't open it. Didn't burn it either. Just slid it back into the drawer and locked it. Daniel never told me what was in that folder. Only said once years ago, "It's better if it never comes out, but if he strays, maybe it'll help him find true north again." Ethan never asked, never knew it existed. I kept it sealed because I still believed he might turn around. Now, let's just say I unlocked the drawer, and the next morning, I left it somewhere it might be found, but only if he's looking. Ethan didn't just take the chair, he took the story. The week after he slid the termination letter across my desk, the company website changed. No announcement, just a quiet revision to the Our History page. H2 Capital was founded by Ethan Danner, a visionary leader building the future of legacy finance. Legacy finance. The word Hawthorne didn't appear once. Neither did Daniel's. I stopped by the office that Friday, not to confront, just to observe. The lobby plaque was gone. Used to read Hawthorne and Danner. Polished brass, mounted on dark walnut. Daniel chose the wood himself. Now there was a thin, silver rectangle with H2 etched in minimalist Helvetica. I didn't go upstairs. Didn't need to. That weekend, Ethan appeared on a podcast. Future Builders. Something with neon colors and an exclamation point in the logo. The host asked about the company's roots. Ethan smiled. It was always mine to modernize. I respected the past, but it had to go. There's no room for nostalgia in enterprise growth. He paused, then added, "The previous leadership resisted change, but I came prepared." They laughed. On Monday morning, an old client forwarded me the link. Just the subject line, "You okay, Lewis?" I deleted it without opening. Then the real damage started. A compliance audit froze the Hawthorne Estate Trust, said they needed to verify distributions. That trust funded a veteran scholarship Daniel and I created 10 years ago. We called every year's recipients the 10 quiet ones. The payments stopped. I called our family accountant. He sounded shaken. "Ethan's invoking Clause 14B from the Shareholder Override Amendment. He has temporary control. I've never seen it used this way." Neither had I. He moved fast. By Thursday, the board held a vote. Remote, paperless, decisive. I was formally relieved of all residual advisory roles. 2 abstained. No objections. The final signature was digital, time-stamped 9:42 a.m. I stared at it for 5 minutes before closing the document. No rage, no rebuttal, just silence. I called Vernon Cho. Figured maybe he'd at least have lunch. He didn't answer the first time, or the second. When he finally picked up, his voice was tight. "Ethan's ambitious, smart, cold, but not wrong. You raised him for this, didn't you?" I didn't respond. Vernon sighed. "I'm staying in for now. That envelope you left? Maybe keep it sealed a little longer." Click. On Wednesday, I parked near the loading dock. Didn't enter. Just waited. Tomas, one of the junior partners, walked out with a box. He spotted me, paused, then walked over and placed the box gently on my passenger seat. Inside, Daniel's books. A signed photo from our first contract, my old fountain pen. "He's redesigning the 8th floor. Everything goes," Tomas said. He hesitated. "You didn't hear this from me." I nodded. He looked at the building once more. He doesn't understand what he's killing. By now, I was no longer a founder. Not on paper, not on record, not even in footnotes. A former intern emailed me a photo. He'd visited HQ for a tour. There was a wall of executive portraits. Mine was missing. Daniel's too. I drove north that weekend. Quiet client. Old rancher named Griggs. Still paid by check. Still used a landline. We sat in folding chairs in his barn, the air thick with diesel and hay. He didn't ask about Ethan. Just handed me a yellow envelope. Inside was a copy of our first contract, signed in ink by me, Daniel, and Griggs. "I keep the originals, but figured you should have one." I nodded. He said, "You're not forgotten." That was all. When I returned, the press release was waiting. H2 Capital confirms full executive transition. No legacy impact expected. 5 words stood alone on the page. Danner removed. No legacy impact. It was clean, sterile, precise. The kind of sentence that erases a man completely. That night I didn't go home. I drove to the old office again, but I wasn't alone. And as I waited across the street, headlights off, I saw something strange. Ethan was still there, office dark, except for his. He was staring at the envelope I left on his desk 2 weeks ago. He hadn't opened it. Not yet. But he hadn't thrown it away either. And that told me everything I needed to know. The foundation building was dark. A for lease sign covered half the front window, the kind with sun-faded letters and a peeling corner. I still had a key. From the old days. The lock caught on the first turn but gave way on the second. The hallway smelled like dust and lost grants. Inside Daniel's old office, the bookshelf was empty, but the filing cabinet was still there, second drawer, left side, exactly where we used to stash the trust records. I pulled 3 manila folders and took photos. Initial endowments, signed letters, disbursement ledgers, Daniel's signature, my signature, no mention of Ethan. One sheet stood out. A scanned copy of Daniel's handwritten note. For the veterans, always. I didn't pocket anything. Just took the photos, locked the drawer, and left the place untouched. By noon, I was at Sherwood and Blake, the law office that handled our incorporation back in 1994. They were surprised to see me. I wasn't. Mr. Blake still had the same glasses and a darker suit. He glanced over the documents, nodded once, and said, Clause 6.3 still applies. You can submit a retention claim under advisory rights. I didn't say a word, just handed over the printed photos and signed the form. He stamped it, slid it into a file, and said, "We'll notify them this afternoon." I stood, buttoned my coat. "Mr. Danner," he said as I reached the door, "you're not the first legacy they tried to erase." I paused, nodded, then walked out. Sherwood's junior associate brought in coffee while we waited for the filing confirmation. She couldn't have been more than 25, nervous, tapping her pen. "You worked with Mr. Hawthorne, right?" she asked. I nodded. "My dad got a scholarship from the Quiet Ones Fund. He said it saved his life." I didn't smile, just raised my coffee in acknowledgement. She left the room quietly. That evening, I stopped by Ellison State University. Daniel used to give a guest lecture there every spring. They had a plaque with his name in the economics wing. It was gone. I asked the dean's assistant. She said they'd been informed by H2's legal team that the foundation was under restructuring and all naming rights were being reconsidered. Reconsidered. That was the word they used when they didn't want to say erased. On the way back to the truck, I passed the student union. A boy, mid-20s, army haircut, was handing out flyers. "Vets for Equity," it said. He offered me one. I took it. I asked if he'd heard of the Quiet Ones program. His eyes lit up. My uncle was one of the first. Said it kept him from going back to war just to pay rent. I nodded once and kept walking. That night, I couldn't sleep. The letter to Ethan was still in my inbox. I didn't open it. Not yet. 2 days later, Ethan gave an interview. Not a podcast this time. Bloomberg. He stood in front of a digital backdrop with stock tickers scrolling behind him. "We've restructured legacy assets for modern transparency. The H2 Foundation now functions as a high-efficiency ESG investment vehicle. We honor the past, but we serve the future." He smiled. Not to the interviewer, at the camera, at me. I paused the stream, rewound. Behind him in the scrolling fine print was the new fund name, H2 Transitional ESG Trust. They'd dissolved the original foundation, quietly, legally. I called my accountant. 2 rings. "He buried it in Delaware," he said. "Shell amendment through a feeder fund, clean." I hung up without replying. The next morning, I parked outside a cafe near 6th Avenue, across the street from H2's newest satellite office. I wasn't there to go in, just to see who came out. Tomas stepped out after 20 minutes, phone in hand, eyes scanning. He spotted my truck, walked over, and slid into the passenger seat. He didn't look at me, just opened his email and showed me a screenshot, a memo, dated 3 weeks before Daniel's death. Sent from Daniel's personal account. Subject line, "For Ethan. Only." Tomas said, "It was archived by mistake in the Legacy HR folder. No one saw it until I searched Daniel's name this morning." I didn't read the body of the message. Didn't need to. Not yet. The subject line was enough. The date was enough. If he read that letter and still did this, then we're not playing the same game. Not even close. The envelope was heavier than I remembered. Cream-colored, sealed with Daniel's old fountain pen signature across the flap. I broke the seal with a letter opener from my desk drawer, the same drawer where he used to keep bourbon and a spare inhaler. The handwriting hadn't changed in decades. "Ethan, if you're reading this, I'm gone. I assume you're consolidating, rebranding, positioning for the next wave. Just remember, stock moves fast. Legacy doesn't. If it ever becomes too easy to forget who built this place, you'll need someone to remind you. I trust Lewis more than I ever trusted my instincts. He knows where the bones are buried, because he buried most of them with me. Don't disappoint him. That's your only warning." Daniel. No poetry, just precision. And one line that changed everything. Clause 7.4 is in effect. Clause 7.4. Dormant powers of oversight reserved for the co-founder in case of executive deviation from original mission. It had never been invoked. Until now. The next morning I made one phone call. Then I shaved, pressed a clean shirt, sat in silence, until it was time. Ethan walked into the boardroom like a man already calculating future headlines. 3 venture partners sat across the table, neutral expressions, sleeves rolled. Tomas stood near the window. So did Marion, the CFO Daniel had hired 3 years before his stroke. I didn't rise when Ethan entered, just slid the file toward him. Inside, Daniel's letter, the amended charter, and one more thing, a screenshot of a donation reversal he'd quietly approved 2 weeks after Daniel's funeral. The beneficiary was a veterans hospice in Oregon. The money was redirected to an accelerator partnership based in Singapore. Ethan didn't flinch. I have authority over global allocations now, he said flatly. You know that. Marion spoke for the first time. You did, until this morning. She passed him a printed notice. The ink was still warm. Legal reinstatement of Clause 7.4, verified by Sherwood and Blake. Notarized at 7:42 a.m. The room was quiet. Ethan glanced around, saw the votes weren't there. Not this time. He exhaled hard, stood and said, You're playing a legacy card in a momentum market. You think anyone cares? I didn't respond. Just leaned back slightly and tapped the letter once. I'm not here for the market. He walked out, not a word to anyone else. On my way out of the building, someone tapped my shoulder near the elevator. Early 30s. Business dress. Calm eyes. I'm sorry to interrupt, she said. But you're Louis Danner, right? I nodded. She pulled an envelope from her bag. My name's Elise Navarro. My dad was part of the quiet ones. I found this cleaning out his things last month. I took the envelope. Plain. No stamp. Just a sticky note. In case it ever falls apart. I didn't open it, just said, Thank you. She smiled, paused, and said, He said you never raised your voice, just raised everyone else. Then she walked away. That night I opened the second envelope. Inside was a photo of the first veteran cohort. Daniel in the center. Me beside him. Young, angry, unsure of everything, and a signed affidavit. From Daniel, dated 6 months before his death. It authorized me to dissolve the foundation if its mission was ever breached. He never filed it, never needed to. Until now. The next day, I called the legal team. I'm not invoking the affidavit, I said, but I'll be dissolving my name. They were confused. I clarified. I'd be withdrawing every right I still held from the H2 name. No lawsuits, no countersuits, just a clean severing of legacy. Instead, I created a new fund. No branding, no press, no corporate partners. Just direct deposits to quiet causes. I named it Section 7-4. A week later, Ethan held a press conference. He called the restructuring visionary, but journalists had already seen the filings. They knew what Clause 7.4 meant. They knew about the missing donations, and they knew he didn't see it coming. He looked smaller on camera this time, the suit too sharp for the face inside it. I didn't watch the full video, just the first 2 minutes. Then I closed the tab. At home, I opened the attic for the first time in a decade, pulled down a box labeled DH in faded black marker. Inside, Daniel's dog tags, a folded flag, one of our first grant approvals, and an unopened letter, addressed not to me, but to Ethan's wife. I didn't read it, just placed it in a padded envelope and mailed it to a return address I remembered from years ago. No note, just a gesture. The building had a new name now, same address, same foundation, but no mention of Daniel, no trace of the original charter, just a brushed metal sign that said, Veritas Impact. I didn't cross the street, just stood there for a moment, watching people go in and out, no one looking up, no one remembering. Then I turned, walked 2 blocks north to a small cafe Daniel used to favor after board meetings. Still there, same chipped mugs, same burnt cinnamon rolls under the glass dome. I ordered what he always ordered. Black coffee, no lid. Cinnamon roll, no icing. The kid behind the counter didn't recognize me. But when I said the name Danner, he paused. Used to be a guy who came in here every Thursday, sat by the window, said this was the only place that didn't talk too much. I nodded, paid in cash, left a $5 bill under the cup. 3 days later, in a town outside Omaha, a small veterans center received an envelope. Inside, a cashier's check for $42,000. No sender, no logo, just a typed note. For upgrades, Section 7-4. The director looked around the room. Leaky roof, frayed chairs, one computer with a cracked monitor. Then he smiled. Guess the ghosts still pay attention. I didn't watch the news anymore. Didn't need to. Every so often I'd get a voicemail from an old contact. CFOs, caseworkers, mentors' sons, most just said, "I saw what you did, thank you." No return call needed. One morning I opened the attic. I hadn't been up there in years. Dust like snow on every box. Pulled down one marked DH in black permanent marker. Inside, Daniel's dog tags, a folded flag, our first community grant approval from 1989, a yellowed press clipping, 2 vets launch fund for the forgotten. At the bottom, a small envelope I hadn't seen before, addressed in Daniel's handwriting. To be opened in peace. I didn't open it, just held it for a while. Then I placed it back inside the box, closed the lid, carried it to the back of the attic. Out of reach, but not out of mind. That evening, I brewed coffee at home. No noise, no agenda. Just the sound of the kettle, the click of the light switch. On the counter sat a worn photo of me and Daniel in front of our first office. I turned the frame over, not to hide it, just to rest it. Then I stepped out onto the porch. Chilly air, bare trees, faint sound of wind moving through everything we'd built. I sat down, let the silence settle, and stayed there a long time. He left the room. I just closed the door. The gentleman's revenge isn't loud, but it's always personal. If this felt personal, make it personal. Subscribe now, and don't miss tomorrow's story.